We have all these like incredibly precise metrics for tracking our lives today.
Oh, absolutely. Everything is quantified.
Right. You can open an app right now and see exactly how many steps you've taken or, your exact screen time down to the minute.
Yeah, your heart rate variability or even the precise mathematical compounding of your retirement account.
Exactly. We measure our existence obsessively. But the strange thing is, none of those metrics can actually tell you if you've been truly living.
That is such a good point.
I mean, you could have perfect vitals and a meticulously tracked calendar, but still feel this overwhelming sense of emptiness, like you're just a passenger in your own body.
Yeah, it's the illusion of measurement. We mistake the tracking of our biological and financial existence for the actual experience of life.
Which is wild when you really think about it.
It is. And what's fascinating about the sources we are analyzing today is that they confront this exact modern crisis, but they do it using incredibly distilled, ancient-feeling philosophical maxims.
Yeah, these definitely aren't new problems.
Not at all. I mean, the struggle with chronic anxiety, the feeling that time is just slipping through our fingers, the endless treadmill of materialism, these texts diagnose the human condition with a brutal clarity.
They really cut right through the noise of our daily information overload, don't they?
They do. They force you to look at how you're spending your days.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the very first concept the text throws at us completely shatters how we typically think about time.
Yeah, it doesn't hold back.
It drops this massive claim. It says, life, if well lived, is long enough. And then it follows up with an observation that really forces you to pause. It says, the part of life we really live is small, for all the rest of existence is not life, but merely time.
Wow. The distinction being made there between living and merely time is so vital.
Right.
We tend to think of a lifespan as, a single uninterrupted line from birth to death. But the source argues that a lifespan is actually highly fragmented.
Like broken up into pieces.
Exactly. A vast majority of that timeline is just passive biological functioning. The text is pointing out that the life we are given isn't inherently short. We actively make it short by squandering it.
It's hard.
We hemorrhage time, not necessarily by doing bad things, but by doing nothing of substance.
I read that and immediately thought about the phenomenon of doom scrolling.
Oh, perfect example.
Like you sit down after work, you open a social feed, and suddenly 3 hours just evaporate.
It's gone.
Right. And you were technically alive for those 3 hours. Your heart was beating, your lungs were processing oxygen, but you didn't live those hours.
You didn't experience them.
No. You essentially traded a non-renewable resource, 3 hours of your finite existence, for a temporary numbing effect. You just pass the time.
And we do that because it serves a psychological purpose. The trap outlined in the text is one of passive postponement.
Postponement.
Yeah, we constantly delay the heavy, meaningful acts of living for some mythical future date. A time when we assume we will finally have enough money or enough free time or enough security.
The classic I'll be happy when mindset.
Exactly. And the source notes that while we are busy postponing, life speeds by more often frightened than hurt.
Frightened than hurt. That's a great line.
It is. We are so paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong move or facing discomfort that we choose the anesthesia of passive distraction.
So I guess the question becomes, how do we break out of that paralysis?
Well, the text is quite blunt about the solution.
Yeah, the directive is begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life.
I love that.
Me too. I love the framing of that. You stop looking at your life as this daunting, decades-long marathon where the finish line is obscured by fog.
Right, because that's overwhelming.
Exactly. Instead, you compress your focus entirely to the next 24 hours. You treat today as a complete, enclosed lifetime.
By shrinking the timeline, you force agency back into your hands. If today is your entire life, well, doom scrolling for 3 hours becomes a catastrophic waste of a massive percentage of your existence.
It creates a really healthy sense of urgency.
It definitely does.
Which brings us to an image in the text that is genuinely haunting to me. It states, often, a very old man has no other proof of his long life than his age.
Oof.
Right. Just imagine reaching the absolute end of the timeline, and the only evidence that you actually participated in the human experience is the date printed on your birth certificate.
That's terrifying.
You left no mark, you took no risks, you just managed to not die for 80 years.
It's a tragic outcome, and the underlying mechanism that drives a person into that hollow existence is a lack of internal direction.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, when you don't define what a lived life looks like for yourself, You default to society's baseline. And that baseline is usually a constant gnawing craving for more.
Let's explore that trap of craving and direction, because the source hits us with another really sharp insight here.
Oh, the one about being everywhere.
Yeah. It says, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. It diagnoses the root of our constant busyness and failure, stating, our plans miscarry because they have no aim.
The phrasing it uses is brilliant.
Yeah, it says, when a man does not know what harbor he is making for, no wind is the favorable wind.
That concept of the harbor is essential for understanding human motivation. Without a defined aim, literally every external event is either an annoyance or a distraction.
I was thinking about this, and it's basically like getting in your car without putting a destination in the GPS.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like if you just start driving, every single turn feels frustrating. You hit traffic and you're mad, but you don't even know where you're going. You're just burning gas and time.
You end up exhausted at a place you never wanted to be.
Exactly. You can't leverage the road system if you refuse to pick a destination.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that perpetual aimlessness is deeply intertwined with modern materialism and greed.
How so?
Well, when you don't have a defined harbor, like a specific definition of what constitutes enough for you, your default setting becomes infinite accumulation.
You just want more and more.
Right. The text frames it brilliantly. It says, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Poverty here isn't a metric of your bank account. It's a psychological state of perpetual lack.
Because the craving itself is like a void that expands the more you try to fill it?
Precisely. The text observes a rather dark truth about human nature. It says, if we could be satisfied with anything, we should have been satisfied long ago.
Wow, that's painfully true.
It is. The fact that a person is still desperately chasing the next promotion or the next luxury purchase is empirical proof that acquiring things does not cure the underlying condition of craving.
And the source highlights how insidious this gets with the physical items we surround ourselves with, too.
Oh yeah, the clutter.
Yeah. It notes that we often find ourselves using things not because we needed them, but because we had them.
That is such a piercing observation of modern consumerism.
Oh, I know. We fill our houses with gadgets, subscriptions, clothes, and then we create these artificial obligations to use them just to justify the purchase.
We basically become administrators of our own clutter.
That's exactly what it is. And the text warns that we often fail to realize how entirely unnecessary these things are until we actively force ourselves to go without them.
And the cost of maintaining all that unnecessary baggage is paid out in our future well-being.
Right.
The text advises us to enjoy present pleasures in such a way as not to injure future ones. When we gorge on instant gratification without a defined aim, we aren't just wasting the present moment. We are actively cannibalizing our future stability.
Both financially and emotionally.
Absolutely.
And the natural byproduct of that cannibalization of living without a harbor and constantly craving more is a tremendous amount of internal friction.
The mind just overheats.
Right. This forces us to look at the psychological battleground the text maps out for us, specifically regarding how we manage our own thoughts.
The philosophy presented here positions the mind not just as a tool, but as the primary source of human suffering if it's left unmanaged.
So the central tension the text establishes is this. We suffer more from imagination than from reality. And a man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary.
It's a very Stoic idea.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here because this is where the philosophy sort of rubs up against our evolutionary instincts.
Okay, let's hear it.
Isn't suffering in our imagination just a survival mechanism? Like if I'm imagining an upcoming market crash or a potential layoff or a medical issue, isn't that just my brain trying to prepare me for the worst? That seems highly practical.
It feels practical, which is why we so fiercely defend our own anxiety.
Right.
But the text draws a rigid boundary between rational preparation and anxious dependence. The source clarifies this by stating, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. The mind that is anxious about the future is miserable.
So what's the actual difference in practice?
The difference lies in agency. Preparation is an action you take in the present tense. You save money, you update your resume, you eat healthy.
Okay.
Anxiety, on the other hand, is a paralyzing, repetitive loop of imagination about a future you fundamentally cannot control.
I see. So it's the difference between buying an umbrella and spending 3 days staring at the sky terrified of a cloud.
That's a perfect way to look at it. The text reminds us, what can happen at any time can happen today. The future is entirely uncertain.
Yeah.
But worrying about it doesn't build resilience. It simply ensures you experience the suffering twice, once in your head and once if the event actually occurs.
That makes total sense. And it isn't just anxiety about the future that compromises the mind. It's also anger about the present.
Oh, anger is a huge theme here.
The source has a very uncompromising stance on this. It notes that anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it.
That is so true.
We often allow the emotional reaction to an insult or a slight to do significantly more damage to our own nervous system, our relationships, and our peace of mind than the original instigator ever could have.
What's fascinating here is the text doesn't just tell you to magically stop being angry. It provides a mechanical understanding of how emotions operate.
It breaks it down.
Yeah, it offers a clear triad of insights. First, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Second, only time can heal what reason cannot. And third, ignorance is the cause of fear.
I want to dig into that first one because delay sounds almost too simple to be a remedy for something as visceral as rage.
It does sound simple, but physiologically it makes total sense.
How so?
Anger is a sudden hijacking of the brain's limbic system. When you are furious, your logic center, the prefrontal cortex, is essentially offline.
You literally can't think straight.
Right. You cannot reason your way out of a spike in adrenaline. The source understands that time is the only thing that allows that chemical flood to recede. Delay is the mechanism that allows reason to reboot.
That's amazing. So the overarching theme here is that unchecked emotional reactions are our primary adversaries.
Exactly. When we cure our ignorance through learning, we dismantle fear. When we impose a delay on our anger, we dismantle rage.
The text is basically pointing out that the external world is largely indifferent to us. We are the ones who manufacture our own misery through poor mental habits.
Which is a tough pill to swallow, but highly empowering once you accept it.
So how do we actually rebuild those mental habits? The text suggests that the only way to forge this kind of mental resilience is by actively stepping into the things we spend our lives trying to avoid.
Yeah, it requires a fundamental inversion of how we view comfort and hardship.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text exposes this glaring paradox in human behavior. It says you act like mortals in all that you fear and like immortals in all that you desire.
Such a profound quote.
Think about how profoundly true that is. When faced with a risk, a difficult conversation, or a potential failure, we act like the slightest breeze will shatter us into a million pieces.
We become so fragile.
But when it comes to acquiring wealth or chasing status, we act like we have 3 centuries to enjoy the spoils. We are terrified mortals when it comes to effort, and entitled immortals when it comes to reward.
And the source argues that this asymmetry is exactly what makes us weak. It asserts that it is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness.
Yeah.
And it notes, the bravest sight in the world is to see a great man struggling against adversity.
You know, we generally look at someone who has a perfectly smooth life, unlimited funds, and 0 tragedy as the ultimate winner.
Oh, society idolizes that.
But this philosophy essentially pities that person. The text states that to be always fortunate and to pass through life with a soul that has never known sorrow is to be ignorant of one half of nature.
Because if you shield yourself from all adversity, you end up with an incredibly fragile character.
It's just like going to the gym, right?
Exactly.
You wouldn't expect to get stronger without lifting heavy weights. The resistance is what builds the muscle. So why do we expect to build character without facing adversity?
You can't. The resistance is required.
The text actually highlights this perfectly. It says, to bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden.
Yes, we take away misfortune's power, not by avoiding it, but by developing the internal structure to carry it, which leads directly to the ultimate goal outlined in the text.
Which is?
Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power.
Self-mastery. The realization that external variables will always fluctuate, but it is the power of the mind to be unconquerable.
And that unconquerable state is an emergent property of enduring the rough road. The text reminds us, no man was ever wise by chance.
Wisdom is earned through friction.
Exactly. It reframes our entire concept of fortune, bringing to mind the source's famous definition. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity.
I love that.
You endure the rough road, you stress test your character. When an opportunity finally manifests, you actually possess the structural integrity to capitalize on it.
But, you know, self-mastery is an internal state, and we don't live in a vacuum. We have to navigate a world heavily populated by other people.
Many of whom have absolutely no interest in mastering themselves.
Right. So how do we deal with them?
Well, the text's framework for social dynamics is just as rigorous as its framework for internal psychology.
The source acknowledges that human connection is non-negotiable. It states clearly that there is no enjoying a valuable possession unless one has someone to share it with.
We fundamentally need community.
But the text also delivers a stark warning against being controlled by people, money, or past experiences. So how do we balance needing others to share joy with while not being controlled by them?
The text navigates this by establishing strict boundaries regarding proximity and intention. The first principle is curation. Associate with people who are likely to improve you.
So guard your circle.
Very closely. You are a sponge for the habits and anxieties of those around you. If you surround yourself with people who lack an aim and complain endlessly, you will eventually adopt their posture.
It also challenges our modern definition of loneliness. The text observes, you are lonely not because no one needs you, but because you care about who is next to you.
That flips the narrative completely.
Isn't it?
Loneliness isn't a lack of utility. It's a lack of resonance. You can be needed by 100 clients or employees and still feel profoundly isolated if there is no genuine reciprocal care.
And the text warns against the illusion of shallow networks, too.
Yes. It notes that spending one's life constantly moving and seeking novelty results in having many acquaintances, but no friends.
Which feels like a direct indictment of how we interact online today, prioritizing a broad reach over deep roots.
Absolutely.
But what about when things go wrong? Like, dealing with friends is one thing, but dealing with enemies or conflict requires a different calculus.
It does. And the text has a fascinating rule of engagement for when someone harms you.
Yeah, it says, he who has injured thee was either stronger or weaker than thee. If weaker, spare him. If stronger, spare thyself.
It's essentially an instruction in energy conservation.
Let's apply that to modern life.
Wow.
Say, a toxic corporate environment or an internet argument.
Okay, good scenario.
If someone who is clearly weaker or less informed lashes out at you, your ego screams at you to crush them, to prove your superiority.
Right, you want to win.
But the text says to spare them, because crushing the weak yields no honor and it just wastes your finite time.
And on the flip side,
If you are up against a massive, intractable system or a vastly stronger opponent who is determined to injure you, your ego might push you to fight a losing battle just to prove your bravery.
the text says spare yourself.
Exactly. Walk away. Engaging in mutual destruction out of pride is foolish.
It connects back to the source's assertion that all cruelty springs from weakness. A truly self-mastered individual has nothing to prove by destroying a weaker opponent and enough wisdom to avoid being destroyed by a stronger one.
And when you scale these ideas up from individual interactions to societal structures, things get even more complex.
This raises an important question about how society manipulates these truths. The source provides a heavily sociological lens on power and belief.
Like its view on religion, right?
Yes, it makes a very clinical, bold observation about the architecture of society. It states that religion is regarded by the common people as true, by the wise as false, and by rulers as useful.
That is a fascinating look at the mechanics of civilization.
It really is.
The text is pointing out how different strata of society interact with the exact same institutional structure based on their proximity to power. It's urging the reader to understand the utility of the systems they live within, rather than blindly accepting the surface narrative.
It's asking you to observe the motives of the architects, and this translates into a highly practical warning for your own life choices. Be wary of the man who urges an action in which he himself incurs no risk.
Oh, the armchair generals.
Exactly.
The people who tell you to quit your stable job or put your life savings into a volatile asset or engage in some conflict, but they have absolutely no skin in the game.
If it all burns down, they lose nothing while you lose everything.
It's a great reminder to only take counsel from those who are exposed to the same wind you are. Okay, we have excavated a massive amount of philosophy today. So what does this all mean?
We pull it together.
Yeah, let's pull all these threads together for you. We started by confronting the uncomfortable truth that we have to stop merely passing time and start living, treating every single 24-hour cycle as a complete, self-contained life.
We saw that in order to truly live, we have to define our harbor. We had to select a specific aim to prevent being swept away by the endless, unquenchable craving for more.
The trap of modern materialism.
Right.
And then we ventured into the battlefield of the mind.
Yeah.
We realized that we must discipline our imagination to stop suffering from future anxieties that haven't even happened.
And utilize the power of delay to neutralize anger.
Yes. We explored the necessity of the rough road, understanding that adversity isn't something to be avoided, but the very win required to build the strength of an unconquerable mind.
And finally, we looked at how to move through society, curating our connections for genuine depth, managing conflict by bypassing our ego, and remaining vigilant against those who ask us to take risks they refuse to share.
It's a lot, but the overarching thesis of the source is deeply empowering.
It really is. To you, the listener, remember this quote.
Yeah.
We learn not in school, but in life. These aren't just academic concepts to memorize. They are tools meant to be used.
They're deeply practical.
Yes. The text assures us that the greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach. It demands effort and discipline, certainly, but it also promises that no evil propensity of the human heart is so powerful that it may not be subdued by discipline.
That true power comes from within. But, the text does leave us with one final urgent provocation.
A warning, really.
Yeah. It warns that what really ruins our character is the fact that none of us looks back over his life.
We become so obsessed with moving forward, with tracking those metrics we talked about, that we never stop to evaluate the direction we are actually heading.
And without reflection, the timeline just runs out.
It does.
So here is a challenge for you today, drawn directly from the closing wisdom of our sources. Take an inventory of your harbor. Look back at the friction in your mind.
Because, as the text notes, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end.
You have the capacity to end the passive existing, the aimless craving, and the anxious loops right now. The philosophy leaves us with this final, powerful objective. Make sure against your dying day that your faults die before you do.
A standard to live by.
Let that be the standard by which you measure a life actually lived. Until next time.